Hello, friends. Captain Behnam here with another great episode of Date with Destiny. I have a very, very special guest here. She's actually has become a good friend of mine, and we don't live too far from each other. I have tremendous respect for Captain Merryl Tengesdal. She is a U-2 pilot, first female black U-2 pilot, called sign Dragon Lady. Over 3,400 hours of flight time, 300 hours of combat hours, and she's been flying for over 24 years. She got a bestseller book, Shatter the Sky. You can find that on Amazon. And she also starred at Tough as Nails season 2 on the reality show. Colonel Merrill, thank you for my invitation and thanks for having you on this podcast. How are you?
I'm fine. I'm doing really well. Thank you so much for having me on your podcast, Chris. So it's been cool. Thank you so much.
That's great. Last time we met was a book signing at an air show. That's how we got to know each other, and we just hit it off and became friends. So as I started this podcast, I am all about empowering people, hearing great stories, life-changing stories, and sending a great message to people who are aviation enthusiasts, and also young people, male or female, women of color or not, the different backgrounds. And I really want them to get to know you because you literally shatter the skies. You literally shatter the skies with what you have done. And I get so excited talking to you. And, every time we talk about these things, it's always like, it's a first thought. Colonel Merrill, welcome to Date with Destiny. From the streets of Bronx to the stratosphere, your journey is nothing short of incredible. Looking back, did you ever imagine yourself and your career to take you where you're at?
I was 7 years old when I decided that I wanted to be an astronaut. And I knew I was going to somehow be in space. So in my mind, since I was 7, I'm like, this is a done deal. I've decided to do this. I want to do it. I would not have in my whole lifetime thought I would go on this particular journey. I thought it would be more clear cut, and it wasn't, but it's been amazing. It's been amazing what I've been doing. Every day is such a gift, and it's great to know that as long as you are adaptable and flexible in your mindset and how you handle, just challenges that come at you, detours that you have to take, man, it just makes the journey that much better. Now that I look back, I'm just like, man, this is amazing. I would have never thought it would have gone this way. And I'm having a great time doing it. And I continue to do stuff. So, I look for what's coming next.
Oh, that's amazing. Just like you, I had a dream of becoming a 747 pilot. That dream was installed in me when my dad took me to the airport and we saw a Pan Am 747 take off. I was 9 years old, and that was it. I was hooked. I wasn't going to be denied. No matter what happened in life, no matter what curveball or stones were thrown my way, I kicked them out of the way, and I got it done. You were the first black woman to fly U-2. I can't chuckle just saying that. Dragon Lady, the history making. When you first stepped in the cockpit of that aircraft? What went through your mind? How did you feel?
So, every U-2 pilot goes through an interview process.
Right.
So when I got into that aircraft the first time, I was like, wow. At that time there were steam gauges. We had some aircraft were upgrading to glass cockpit. So I was like, okay, it's a little old, but let's see what we got. And the first time I flew it, when I got up in the aircraft and took off, it's almost like taking a ride in an escalator that goes up very quickly, because the pitch of the aircraft when you take off is, it can be anywhere from 22 degrees to 30 degrees nose high. And the way it takes off, because it's 17,000 pounds of thrust, single engine, it's kind of exhilarating. It's like, whoa, You don't
It's
feel
just
like
like a
that when
rocket. You go boom.
yeah, when you fly a prop plane, you're not feeling that. When you're flying a helicopter, you don't feel like that. So it's definitely a very quick climb up. By the time we're at the end of the runway, we're already above 3,000 feet. So the takeoff roll in um, an aircraft that doesn't have a lot of fuel is about 600 feet down the runway before you take off. So it's very quick and it's exhilarating. The first time I actually took controls of the aircraft to feel the stall characteristics of the aircraft, it's a little eye-opening. It's a lot of the aircraft does not like to fly at low levels very well. It even though it's a jet engine, it suffers from adverse yaw as if it's a prop plane. It does a lot of weird things, so you have to get used to it. And
Yeah.
luckily, I've had helicopter experience with fixed wing when I flew the aircraft. The first landing is humbling. Um, you have to stall it at 2 feet and hold the main gear off at 2 feet. You have someone giving you calls in the back in a chase car, and so it's just different. It's not for the weak minded. That's for sure. You have to you have to listen to calls. You have to put in corrections. You have to do all these things. So my first flight in the U-2 for an interview flight was it was humbling. I got out of there. I was drenched. My flight suit was drenched. I came out. It was cold that day, but you could see the the smoke coming off, and I'm like, man, I just got fried in this aircraft. I need to bring my A game next day. It was a lot of work. It was a 2-hour flight for the first interview sortie. The tail wheel, just for wing control, because once you land, it's a bicycle landing gear, so it's not like a tricycle like commercial
Right,
airlines.
right,
Actually,
right.
you actually have to keep the wings off the runway, and the first couple of times, your wings are going back and forth like a teeter totter. So the wingspan is about 104.8 feet long. So it's just a lot of aircraft. It's a lot to put in tightly compact. So it's humbling, but I did well in the interview flights, well enough to be accepted. So
And that
it's
was solo, right?
no the U-2 has 2-seater aircraft.
Right.
So the
So
instructor was
initially, the first one, you're with the instructor.
yeah. So the first 7 or 8 flights you're with an instructor. Then you go to your solo flight. Once you're in the program, you do high flights. You do 2 high flights with an instructor, and then the remainder of your flights are solo. So, the first time I was in the suit and did my first high flight, it's different. You're in this bulky NASA spacesuit. Um,
Astronaut suit,
yeah,
practically, right?
yes, it's designed by the same company. And so when you take off, there's not much room in the U-2. It's about this big. So
Yep.
as big,
Yep.
yes, it's about this big, not a lot of room. You take off and you fly. You can't see very well because of the helmet, the windscreen, depth perception is hard, peripheral vision is hard. So it's a lot going on. And
Very
so
confined space. I have sat in the cockpit of it. When a couple of them are very available at the air shows.
yes,
Yeah. We live
it's
very close to Beale Air Force Base, so I've had
right.
a
So
bunch of friends.
yeah, so it's just something that is uncomfortable for most. That's why they do the interview flights.
Yeah.
A lot of people who don't like as soon as they get into the suit, some people are claustrophobic. They're like, "Nah, I don't want to do this program."
Yeah.
For me, it was quite the opposite. I fell asleep in the suit. So just being in close in confined spaces don't bother me very much.
And
So
you're up there at 70,000 feet all by yourself, just like nobody to bother you or talk to you. And just, you know, like
you just
you want, as a woman, you want space. You really had the space, the whole world.
look, I'm an only child, so I like to be alone. You can give me a box and a crayon, and I will keep myself entertained for hours on end. So I
Oh,
know how to be by myself.
yeah.
There's a lot of people who don't know how to be alone in their thoughts, and I love it. I will swim in that like a pool. It's just comfortable, relaxing for me. You get to know yourself, ask yourself the questions, look at yourself in the mirror at all times. So it's for me, it's very peaceful. It's very relaxing. I
That's
like that
that's
situation.
awesome. Listen, I know our time is a little limited. I can talk to you for hours, so I'm gonna go faster through some of the questions. But I'm telling you what, if I run out of time, I'm just gonna have to say we do part two and combine them together because I get so freaking excited to
Yes.
every time we talk about these things because I don't know, there's something about the space, something about being up there. I mean, you go way up. I've been to 41, 43,000 feet. And in a winter time, flying from the US to Europe, sometimes I see the curvature of the earth in a
Yes.
winter. I'm sure from up there, you can see a hell of a lot more. We got to get to that in a second.
Absolutely.
You started electrical, you started studying electrical engineering at the University of New Haven. At what moment did you realize you wanted to take that knowledge from the ground to the air?
So, it was part of my plan when I was 7. I knew I was
How
gonna try and do the best I
amazing
can.
is that? Sorry to interrupt, but knowing what you want at that young age and going after it,
Yeah,
you
I
and
knew.
I are so blessed knowing what we want. And you know what? I installed that in my kids. By the time they were 13, every one of them, they knew what they want to do in life. One is a pilot, one is a doctor, one is an attorney, one is a marine biologist. And I feel so proud and good that they are not lost. They really knew what they wanted to do. And that was just, I guess, talking to them and sharing my experiences. And they are really, the impressionist, the God that is like, you know what? If he can do it, I can do it too. So I keep thinking, they said, they keep telling me, I don't know what I want to do. I don't know what I want to do. I said, well, what would it be if you did know? What would it be if you did know? That question started making them to think. Okay,
I've
go ahead, give me the answer, please.
No, no, no worries. I love that. I love that part about, your family because I try to instill that in my kids. So from 7, I knew, like, I watched a lot of science fiction. I watched Star Trek, and I modeled my life after those characters. Like, they went to school, they
Oh,
did well
interesting.
in the sciences. So I didn't know how well I was going to do in math and science, but I knew that would be my focus, and
Uh-huh.
let the rest happen. So when I went through school and high school, my primary focus was math and science. I was in AP classes, you know, pre-calculus, calculus before I got to college. And then as I was going to college, I knew at that moment when I was in high school some type of engineer. And I didn't know if it was aerospace or aeronautical, but one of the things I did when I was in high school is I did a lot of summer programs with different schools, in particular universities. So I did 2 summers at the University of Binghamton,
Okay.
SUNY Binghamton, New York. The first time I went there, it was for a science technology entry program. At that time, they called it STEP, which is now called STEM.
Uh-huh.
And so I did a lot of science projects and I was good at it. They invited me the next year to work one on one with a professor who happened to be in electrical engineering. And
Okay.
so and the reason why I tell this story is because that was the basis for me in college to get a position at the University of Maine in Orono, Maine, doing electrical engineering studies under the
Okay.
National Science Foundation. So it was in the same thing I did in high school. I did what's called sound acoustic wave sensors. So we did thin film depositions, what they use in semiconductor technology. And so I learned how to use um, a thin film, a vacuum system, and that
Yeah.
kind of translated later on when I was doing sputtering techniques. So I'm totally geeking out, but
You
that was
are. You are. I love it.
that was my fallback if I didn't become a military pilot. I was going to do research and engineering. And I decided to do electrical engineering because my professor at that time in SUNY Binghamton was Professor Morris. He was the one who kind of guided me to do this research. So I did research there. I did research at a high school, Bronx High School of Science. In the summertime, they had programs. I did stuff in biology. So most people like see me as this jovial person, this pilot, but I really have this like technical side of me that I can turn
Mhm.
on and off at any time. So I knew that electrical engineering was going to be the thing for me, not aerospace or aeronautical. I couldn't decide between the two, but I felt that electrical made me more well-rounded for the digital side, or if you wanted to do the power side. So,
Right.
that's all. That's why I picked it. And I liked the school that I went to because it was a smaller school and they were more dedicated to each student. So
Yeah. Yeah, I studied physics and math because I just loved physics, and then aerodynamics. And I was like, oh, if I couldn't become a pilot for whatever reason, I'd still be in the field, you know. And thank God that I did become a pilot because, oh my goodness, I mean, 44 years in aviation, over 30,000 hours, and travel to 44 different countries, and
Awesome.
going up there, there's nothing like it. You were often one of the few women and sometimes the only woman in your program or a squadron. What kept you pushing forward? And when you didn't see people who looked like you in those roles, what did that mean to you when you were just pushing the envelope?
I mean, as a woman in most of these fields, these science fields, these technology, there's not gonna be many who look like you. And what kept me pushing is because I want to be the best. I don't care if you're a male or female, like if we're in it's a friendly competition. It's not like I'm gonna destroy you, but it's in the military when you're flying or you're you're in this competition on who's gonna rank because they have rank orders and who's gonna make it to
Right.
the next rank. So for me, it was about being the best in what I needed to do. So if I flew helicopters, not only did I have to know how to fly the helicopters, but I had to know them. I wanted to know the maintenance side. I wanted to understand everything that was in relation to helicopter flying, whether it was understanding the supply system on how we get parts, how you put those parts together. I wanted to know a little bit of, and I was in the Navy at the time, what the AD was doing, what the AM was doing, which is the mech, the guy who's putting on the rotor blades. I want to help turn wrenches, which they let me do until I tried to over torque a bolt and then they yelled at me. But I loved it. I loved it so much. Like I get so immersed in something because um I want to know from A to Z how it all works, how the sausage is made. And not only just from my perspective, I want to do that, but also when it comes to competition, it just puts you ahead of your peers who may want to do something that evening, party for that evening, or do something else, or they're distracted. No, I knew everything that I did was for the purpose of putting these tools in my tool belt because I wanted to be an astronaut. I
Yeah,
knew one day if I went into space, there were going to be situations that no one had ever seen before. And I needed all the possible tools to
love
navigate
it.
and go through that. So that's that's why I tell people in life when you're doing something you quite don't want to do, come with that curiosity and that perspective because you're learning something that's going to inform a decision later on in your life. You never know when it's going to
Hmm.
happen, but I would bet on it that it will happen and you will have that knowledge and that experience to deal with it in a more peaceful and calm manner. And people are like, wow, you're a good pro at this. You do this, you do that. No, it's just you're prepared for almost anything by
Exactly,
almost
exactly.
anything. So
Yeah,
that's the
always
mind.
going the extra mile. Yeah, always going the extra mile.
Absolutely. And when, for women or women of color, people who are different, you stand out in a good way.
Yes,
And so when there's no one who looks like you and you're trying to get to that next level, you will form partnerships and allies with people who don't look like you but walk in the same direction as you. Those are the people who have the same ideas, who believe in, hey, cream rises to the top, let the best do it regardless of what you
yes,
look like. And so
exactly.
yeah, so that's I tell people that you can't find someone who looks like you. I mean, like you and I growing up, there weren't that many. We
Right.
are we are the representation now. But as we were growing up, we looked to other people. I tell people most of my mentors are white men. And they are because they saw something within me, which whether it was a little bit of themselves or they saw my ability and they wanted me to do better. And that's how we should all be. It shouldn't be about any of this stuff. Be with people so they can do better.
Yes.
But then when I do better, don't tell me it's because I had this, or it's DEI, or it's any no,
No.
I outworked you. I outworked you and I outperformed you. There's nothing else.
Exactly.
Don't
There's
don't
nothing else. Exactly.
oh, you
Nobody
had
give me any favors. Yeah.
yeah,
I'll
you
just
had
have
all
to be
this
better.
help. Yeah, you had all this help. No, I was prepared when the opportunity arose and I nailed it. There's nothing else
Yes.
to say.
I love it. I love it. So, just we're talking about this. It's something just popped in my head. I start thinking about my son. He's very much has the same drive as you. Even though he's become a pilot, he's got a commercial and a nice CFI. He just started going to AMP school because he wants, just like you, learn more about how these things work. And it's going to make him so marketable. And, he's kind of, a little, he's a geek, and he's an introvert, and he's like you, like his own space, and he wants to go to Alaska to work. And I said, son, that's awesome trait
Yeah.
to have. Be a pilot and a mechanic that you feel so confident anywhere you go, you can do whatever you want. So let me ask you a question. Go from military pilot, flying helicopter, to you to
Okay, you cut out.
up. I just cut myself out. So going from technical difficulties, Captain Behnam in charge. Don't put me in charge of this. But anyways, so going from helicopters to you two flying, what was the biggest challenge?
There are a lot of similarities between helicopters and U-2s. First of all, a U-2 aircraft is not supersonic, so it's subsonic. You have to use a lot of rudder in the U-2 for coordinated turns. In the
Yeah.
helicopter, the same way. The U-2, a lot of movements. I always compare the movements in the U-2 because you have a yoke, and I
Yeah.
can explain later why we have a yoke instead of a stick. It's a lot of ratcheting movements to keep it's a constant ratcheting movement. It's almost like when you see a NASCAR driver in the seat of the car, and you always see them moving the wheel as they're turning and they're doing all that. Similar to the U-2. And in the helicopter, it's the same. Always these small movements with the collective and the cyclic. So there's a lot of similarities. The only main difference, jet engines stall the aircraft. The U-2, the helicopter, auto rotation, keeping rotor RPMs in a particular window.
Yep. Yep.
Precise movements in the helicopter, precise movements in the U-2. So a lot of it is transferable skills. Quite frankly, in the Navy, when I started flying, helicopters in the Navy made you unrestricted. You can go fly missions in the helicopter, come back and go fixed wing. So I was a fixed wing instructor when I came back. We could just fly. We're just very versatile. You can't have a
Which
jet
airplane
guy.
did you fly as fixed wing?
So I was an instructor in the T-34. And
Okay.
then when the Navy and the Air Force jointly bought the T-6 Texan II, I
Yep.
was one of 4 initial Navy IPs to fly Navy and Air Force students at Moody Air Force Base.
How
So
cool.
yeah, it was great. I've
That's
never
cool.
had it. I jumped in the aircraft that had that new aircraft smell. I'd never smelled that before. It was amazing.
Oh,
So
man.
I flew an aircraft that had like 9 hours. It was the best.
Oh, that's
Um,
cool.
but that's how versatile a helicopter pilot is. You can
Yes.
go back and forth. So the U-2 was not a big leap. The other thing that we do in the U-2 is we have a companion trainer, the T-38. So we fly the fighter jet trainer. So we fly single line thrust aircraft. So faster aircraft, that was a little different, but again, you don't put your feet on the rudders on any T-38.
You're right. Right.
Yeah, you still do that.
Yeah.
But again, these are more transferable skills. So you could see all the aircraft that I flew, they're different, but they're just more tools in my tool set
Yes.
on how I can fly different things. So no aircraft really bothers me to fly. Tail dragger, I don't care. No offense, I'm not a big fan of heavy aircraft, but I'd fly one.
Yeah. How does it feel to be up there at 70,000 feet looking down at Earth from a girl, a 7-year-old girl from Bronx, to be up there at the stratosphere? How does that feel?
It's amazing. We get to see the Earth from a view that a lot of people will never see. Like I've seen the Earth from a view that a lot of people will never see in their lifetime. They're just going to see the Earth at this level, right? Brown level. Maybe you're on
Or
the
they
top.
still think it's flat, right?
Yeah, some people they can still fly. You could go like to Mount Everest or you go to Colorado, 14,000-foot peaks. They're beautiful, but the Earth, as you talked about, you start seeing the curvature of the Earth. The sky starts getting darker at nighttime. Unlimited stars in the sky. It's just no lighting
It
pollution.
literally, I bet you felt like being on a Star Trek
Yes,
spaceship up there looking at the stars.
it's beautiful, and it just tells you how small this Earth is compared to the rest of the universe, how
Yes.
small you are in comparison to the Earth, your problems in life, how small it is, and
Wow.
how short our life is. Because a lot of the stars that you'll see, maybe they don't even exist anymore because of the light,
Yes.
the travel of light. So l- life is so our lifespan is so short on this huge timeline, right, of expansion that we think is still occurring in the universe.
Yeah.
And we're about one grain of sand on that timeline. So, number one, stop sweating all the small stuff because most of
Yeah.
it is. And what can you contribute on that one grain in
Yeah.
in this infinite timeline if you
I
can?
love it. I love
Yeah,
it.
so that's how I think about things, and that's how I try to approach things all the time. I mean, I got
Yeah.
young kids, so they try my patience every day. But in general, how do you do that? And what are you gonna do with this life? I mean, the fact that we're all here living right now is just amazing. And for people who I see who think that they're not worthy, if you've made it and you're born here and you're here functioning, you are worthy. So make something spectacular of it.
Yeah. Metaphorically speaking, I love what you just said. Metaphorically speaking, there is one earth, right? I don't
Right.
believe that. I don't believe that anymore. Having been up there 40,000 feet, the things that you and I have seen, I believe this, and I truly believe this to my core. There are over 7 billion human beings, and there are 7 billion worlds. Everybody's head creates their own world. There's nothing out there that has a meaning until you give it a meaning. So my world, my fiance's world, my kids' world, my business associates' world, all the worlds are different. And like you said, we're just one grain of sand. And don't sort the small stuff because everything is the small stuff. Your body
Yeah.
is perfect. I mean, I tell people that some of my speeches I do. If you have a grain of sand in your eye, you know how much it hurts you. Or you get something in your eye, you cut your finger with a paper. It hurts. And
Right.
when he's not doing that, when you're not hurting, you're perfect. You really are perfect. It's just we have to get control of this thing here called the brain and the mind, because otherwise your body is just like universe is acting perfectly until we poison it with whatever it is, whether it's a stuff that goes in our head or with stuff we put inside our body, we start poisoning it. And then when other things start going off balance, having that balance, creating that balance in life is extremely, extremely important.
I can't agree more. It's just we have to get out of our own way. Like our brains could be incredible. It could be great, but if we bog it down with a lot of negative things, what we consume, whether it's social media or food,
Yeah.
it will make life so much more difficult. And recently it's about consuming media and how you consume news and how those things I've watched that bog a lot of people that I interact with on social media right now, and I try to keep it upbeat, and I try to be like Kendrick Lamar a little bit, turn that TV off just for a little bit,
I,
and
I
get
I have for years. I have, and it just like there's nothing good that comes out of that. Instead, I read good books. I listen to good podcasts. We to listen to stuff that helps us take care of our bodies better and
yes.
be more energetic and more positive. Yeah. Um, Talking about the reconnaissance missions that you did around the world, can you share a mission that stands out from most of them? Would you feel comfortable to talk about it?
So a lot of our missions are classified. I the one I talk about for the YouTube mission is when I was flying over Iraq. So I flew between 2005 in 2007. So those were
Okay.
the times I've
This is
flown.
at 70,000 feet flying over.
Right, and I was at the conclusion of a mission. So
Okay.
typically when we fly our missions, we go in country. We would fly from the Al Dhafra, which was our home base. And we'd fly into Afghanistan, Iraq, and different areas, 24 hours a day. And so I was doing the end of a mission, and basically at that time, Saddam Hussein was still around, and that was one of the primary missions. We had some other subsets for other, uh, the deck of cards. I don't know if you
Yes.
remember that.
Oh yeah, I
Yes.
remember.
Oh, you remember that? Okay, so we would go in country, and then we would go to our particular kill box or zone that we had to deal with, and talk to those troops on the ground and provide information for them in near real time. For most people who don't know, the U-2 does not have any weapons. It's just surveillance, intelligence, surveillance, reconnaissance aircraft. It
Yep.
does imagery in the form of um, Doppler, electrical, optical, infrared, and then it does OBC cameras. So we could take basically Polaroid pictures from up there, tons of them, very accurate, sees a lot of things.
A lot of
So
things people cannot see, you
correct.
can see from up there. Yes.
And certain missions we could do, especially if we did the Doppler, we could see. We would use that to check for IEDs, like if people were disturbing the ground. We see all of that. And we also have a SIGIT package where we could pick up frequencies, and I'll just leave it at that. So I was done with one of my missions, and as I'm about to leave and exit the area, get a call for an army guy was taken hostage immediately, and to set up a perimeter for um, the search and rescue pattern for this person, because at that time, if someone was taken, time was of the essence.
Yes.
Very much so. It's still the same. If someone takes you, the first couple of minutes in a type of hostage type situation is incredibly
Critical.
important. It is
Yeah.
very critical of what you do and how you respond. So immediately I stopped what I was doing, tried to figure out how much gas I would have left. Going into search and rescue mode, something I'm familiar with in the helicopter. I'm like, hey, send me up coordinates so I could do a search pattern. All search patterns when you're flying helicopters look the same, and began to do that. Um, and calling out or seeing if there's anything going on. So that was one of the missions. Did not find the guy, hit my bingo field, and had to return home. Unfortunately, the person was later found the next day, and they did not make it.
Ugh.
So, um,
Mm.
those are the things in the U-2. We're very dynamic in a situation. One minute I could be talking to troops on the ground. Next minute I could be doing the search and rescue. Next minute I could be doing communications relay from one aircraft to another. Have done all of that before. So we just send this information. And when I say near real time, it's pretty quick of what they want, the imaging that we see, and that's what we provide. So that's one of the missions that stuck out to me the most, because I wish I had
It
more
was
fuel.
right at the end of your mission. The
Yeah.
fuel was an issue. You
Yeah, it
did the
was right at
best you could.
it was right at the end of a mission. We spend over at that time I was flying anywhere from 9+ hours, 9+ hours on a mission. So um yeah, a lot of time in the air by yourself. But again, I loved it. I loved talking to the troops on the ground. I love being able to provide that information. I always think of it like we're the angels in the sky trying to make sure these guys are safe.
Safe,
And
yeah.
so, yeah, so,
Yeah.
yeah, it was a privilege and an
Very
honor.
physically demanding, right? It is very
Absolutely.
demanding. How did you train yourself to handle that type of pressure?
So, working out, like, that is in my daily routine.
Hey
We
guys, for you people out there that haven't seen Meryl, she's in great, great shape. She works out and it shows. I can tell you that. Yes, yes.
so,
I love it.
a lot of, at that time, a lot of weightlifting, to build muscle, cardio at that time. In the U-2, we are susceptible to getting decompression sickness. So hydration's important. What you eat is important. Having muscle and being in shape is important. You're by yourself, so you have to be you have to be physically and mentally strong. The
Yes.
U2 the U2 itself is fly-by-wire. If you have a hydraulic malfunction, if the hydraulics get stuck anywhere more than 1 degree nose down, you're not landing that aircraft. The amount of the amount of force that's required to pull the yoke back to get the stall, it would be
Yeah.
too much. You're
Yep.
ejecting the air. You're getting out. We use autopilot up at altitude. If the autopilot kicks off to fly that aircraft, hands only, th- that's the only thing you could do because the stall margin up at altitude is so
Oh yeah,
small.
it's so
So,
small. That envelope is so small.
and what I mean, we call it the coffin corner. So you're a few knots from overspeed or a few knots from stalling.
Yeah.
So if you have to actually hand fly this, it takes so much energy. There's nothing else that you can do. So we need the autopilot to be
It's
able to.
so interesting you say that because when the engine blew up on my 777 at the high speed, about 265 knots, which was Mach 0.83, she was falling apart. It felt like if I kept it like that, it fall apart. And then you have a checklist, you have a SOP.
Right.
So when we did the engine shutdown, severe engine checklist, the next checklist calls for drift down. Drift down, based on the weight, gives you an altitude that airplane that could single engine comfortably fly, which wasn't the case it was not my case because the right wing was not flyable. We could not maintain altitude. And there was an airspeed about 240 knots. So we had to descend from 36,000 feet to 23,000 feet for a single engine and reduce the speed for endurance and making as far as we can at 240 knots. Guess what? About 243 knots, we started stalling because the right wing was not flyable. That is for a clean wing, clean airplane. It felt like I have 90,000 pounds of thrust on the left side, and on the right, I'm carrying a 4-story apartment building at 600 miles an hour.
With a couple of
And
refrigerators.
yes, with a couple of refrigerators. So, talking about balance, I had to create an envelope. I had to create a new envelope in my head because I couldn't slow down to the drift down speed. If I went too fast with a structural failure, God knows what could have happened. So I created this envelope in my own head between 245 and 255 knots and descend in the airplane. I mean, when do you ever descend a jetliner with max thrust on a descent? You usually bring the power back and you glide down. Whether it's a U-2 space shuttle, you glide. You don't need engines to glide. But in this case, I had to have, firewall the left engine and keep it within 1,000 to 1,200 feet descent so I could carry this airplane for 200 miles to landing. There was no runways over the Pacific Ocean. So I know exactly what you're talking about, that the stall margin was so small and I had to keep it in that envelope. And people say, how did it feel like? I said, it felt like having a plate on my fingertips with a ball bearing in the middle and trying to keep it balanced. And that's exactly what you do with helicopter or at really high altitude with U2 and that's what it is. The envelope is so small that you really have, the only place you can be protected is inside that really small window.
And then it just takes all your energy to do
It
that.
really does. Yeah.
it,
Yeah,
it
it
is.
really does. Wow. Beyond flying, you held leadership roles, including Chief of Flight Safety, Director of Inspection at Pentagon. Oh my goodness. I get goosebumps. How did all those leadership experiences help you with who you became and flying the airplane?
So for me, I think especially when I was a mid-stage major, because at this point, I left the Navy after 10 years, switched over to the Air Force to fly the U-2. When I was a mid-grade major, I realized in my leadership positions, I'm now transitioning from a technician, someone who flies planes all the time and knows maintenance, to actually helping people be better versions of themselves, actually leading a squadron to a mission or actually being the operations officer to a goal, to a vision. And so for me, it really highlighted the importance as I saw other leaders and how they
Uh-huh.
were out there. Um, we need better leaders.
Yes,
it, it
yes.
it definitely made me realize that I had the ability to not only get a mission done,
Uh-huh.
I also had the ability to listen to people and to bring people with me in getting that done. And so the long the more positions that I held, the more it honed that experience. And what I learned as I gotta say, as a woman, that compassion or empathy, where some people think that's a bad word,
Mhm.
actually enhances your leadership ability. And we like to say, I like to say now, it's really emotional intelligence, how you handle yourself in situations, how you
Mhm.
can drive, how you can use your emotional intelligence to drive other people. And so I didn't call it that back then, but I knew that the way I handled things in a compassionate way was actually a strength of mine that other leaders at the time when I was coming up didn't necessarily have or didn't understand that they can tap into that. So I had a lot of people
With
who
that compassion comes fairness, right?
it co- it comes
It's
fairness.
really, really important because I always say the leader has to be firm, fair, and consistent in their
Absolutely.
approach.
And there are times I have admonished people, I have written people up, I have taken money from people, but it was not out of anger, it was out of, "I understand where you're coming from, but you broke the rules, and this is what we have to
Yes,
do." And it's that point where you don't bury a wounded soldier. Someone makes a mistake, you don't discard them, you don't dismiss them, you kinda help build them from where they're at and let them
exactly.
know that you made a mistake, you will be held accountable, but where we go from here is up to you, and you will
What is
have
this? What did we learn from this? Yes.
yeah, and you will have options, you will have opportunities to be better. This may mean you don't make another rank. This may mean that for now you may not get promoted, but there will be other opportunities. And I've seen it happen. And I've seen it happen to some of the people that I've been with. But there's also other people when they had hardships. Okay, what can we do? It's not like we need to do the mission, you need to go suck it up. No, how do we help you in your situation, in your hardship, so you could still be focused and still be viable? We're not going to be dismissive of you. And I think a lot of people in the military are all about, we're doing the mission. I don't care. They come across as, I don't care about your hardships. I don't care about your situation. And that right there, especially for these generations coming up, that is a big factor, how they feel valued. That's a big indicator whether they're going to stay or not. And you may
Yes.
not like it. You may be a Gen Xer or a boomer or whatever, and you say, well, they need to suck it up. But that's the reality of the situation. So, how do you manage your emotional intelligence to make them feel valued? Like, you have to understand it's just different. And
Yeah.
so, how do you build them up to be maybe a little harder, not as soft, but
You know, I
still
al-
feel
yeah,
valued?
I always say that human relations is our wonderful asset. Human
Right.
nature is our worst enemy, and really focusing on human relation is really, really important. The next question I had for you was that my date with Destiny came at 36,000 feet over Pacific Ocean. You know, when the engine blew up. Have you ever had moment in your career where everything came down to your skills and what you have learned and your training and your instinct?
Yes. When I was flying Navy helicopters, there was a night off the back of, we were doing a training mission. It was my first ship that I was on, and we were off the coast of Virginia doing some training exercise. We were looking for a sub. The helicopter I flew in was the SH-60 Bravo, and we were we had to visually ID the sub and throw like chem lights or something in the water to ID it. We knew where it was. We had tracked it. We Without a doubt we knew, but we couldn't visually see it because it was nighttime. And we collectively in the cockpit decided to descend below an altitude using what's called a couple approach. So it's basically an automated approach. It was We couldn't go below 200 at night, but we can go to 50 in a coupled approach, and we decided to do it.
Over, you're going to 50 feet over the ocean.
That's correct. And so as I'm pulling out the checklist, I'm new, I'm slow. So collectively, we made a big error. And so as I'm looking for the checklist, my aircraft commander starts a descent and does not tell me. So my head's in the
Ooh.
cockpit and I'm looking for the checklist. I'm not looking at any instruments. I can only tell you what I felt was something not right because I felt the helicopter bump or do something that was not normal. And I look up at our radar altimeter and we're descending through 20 feet.
Oh my goodness.
He he became he became disoriented and he started the descent and the date with destiny is I yelled power. I grab the collective and I pull it into my armpit like nothing has ever happened. We had an air
God,
crew.
you guys are lucky you didn't have 20, 30-foot waves. It would have hit you.
It would have been a wrap. So
Yes. Oh my goodness.
the air crewman in the back was looking outside the window, so he couldn't monitor the altitude because we were under the assumption that our aircraft commander.
Classic case of an accident, huh?
Oh
Your
yeah,
head down. He's looking at something else. He's
yep.
disoriented. Captain's disoriented, or commander is descending, not paying attention. And oh my goodness.
So this
Wow.
was the worst part about it is I talk about this a month or 6 weeks prior. Another crew did the same thing and went into the water, and they took a perfectly good aircraft and put it in the water. Luckily, they all survived. Had we had we not had we entered the water, I believe wholeheartedly the air crew member would have died because he was tethered to the aircraft in a way he wasn't sitting in his seat. So helicopters, when they usually enter the water, they're flip upside down. That's what we
Yeah.
trained to do. So, yeah, it was not a good night. And that as a new helicopter second pilot, I wasn't an aircraft commander at the time. Just a lot of things. We did not even debrief. That's how shaken up we were. We flew for another 2 hours after this event, and we all disbanded, which was
Wow.
another new thing. But as
Wow.
as a pilot flying for the first time, deploying, it made me understand that people make mistakes. Do not assume that because someone has a lot of hours that they are better. They are aware. They can suffer the same spatial disorientation, and that just changed my whole mindset. It's not that I didn't trust him, but he was not the strongest pilot. And so that just made me realize that who I fly with, cockpit crew coordination is incredibly important.
It really
And
is. Doing
and
that
it's
briefing on the ground, just talking
everything.
and getting to know each other, experience. I mean, I have flown with guys, as they say, they were for 10 years on the 777. And here's it, all of a sudden you think 10 years, 777 comes with experience. And then you find out that they've been sitting in the back as a non-flying pilot.
Right.
And the only way they can stay current is by going to, do 3 bounces every 90 days in the simulator. That is the deficiency in the airlines that I think they should change the rules a little bit so the guy actually gets the stick and rudder feeling, not just sit back there and fly the, simulator. When the, stuff hits the fan, sometimes you really need to perform. And that's
Oh,
why I always did the stick and rudder. I mean, I always, as much as I could, if I was one leg, at least one leg, I would hand fly it up and hand fly it down if the condition was good. If I'm going to a very complex aerospace like New York or San Francisco or Chicago with bad weather, I use the autopilot. But if it's beautiful crystal, day coming out of San Francisco and heading over west towards Hawaii, I hand fly it all the way up and I hand fly it all the way down. Because if you don't practice that, when you really need to use those skills, might be too late.
100%. And
Yeah.
just because someone has experience does not mean they can't make mistakes. They can have a bad day, can have an off day. So it's really important to, if you're a very senior pilot, to one, put your ego aside. To never be like in the military. If one person's doing the walk around and another pilot goes and does the walk around again, don't be upset about it. Just think of it as an extra set of eyes that may find something that you don't. And if they do, thank them for it.
I
It's the
mean,
same.
and I ask questions. I always ask the co-pilots, when they did when I was a check airman as a captain, I would do the walk around. And I always come and tell the captain that I'm training, if I found something or everything is good. So when the co-pilot was done the walk around, especially on the 757, which is really long, and he comes back and says, doesn't say anything. He said, is everything good? Because I'm not out there looking at my airplane. You are, and the mechanic. He said, everything is good. He said, yeah. I said, well, any evidence of a tail strike? He said, why do you ask? I said, because one time we got in an airplane, I asked the co-pilot if was there any evidence of a tail strike. He says, you know what? I didn't really pay attention to that. It was at night. His flashlight wasn't bright enough to shine at where the tail skid thing is.
Right.
And he said, I'm not sure. I said, well, why don't we just check it again? And sure enough, he comes back and said, I think this airplane experienced a tail strike. So we got the mechanic involved, and 2 or 3 mechanics came and went and put the ladder up and says, yeah, this airplane had a tail strike. Imagine this. Imagine if we took off, we would have owned that problem.
You would have.
I could not prove that somebody else did it. Plus, as you know, a couple of accidents happened, like a Korean Air, or was it Japan Airlines, many, many years ago. On a 747, they had done a tail strike. The next crew takes it off, and the tail comes off. Yep. And they kill over 500 people. Yeah. It just like, that's, I always say that gut feeling, you just got to go with it. And, if you feel something is not right, guess what? It's not right. Ask your question. Get the other guy involved.
The gut feeling is for sure. And that night, the gut feeling was like, my head's down. What?
Yeah.
Oh, my gosh. Like, I can't. Yeah. Reaction time.
That is literally, like, I don't know how to say it. Just like in my case, it was literally, it's a matter of life or death, literally, because up there, I mean, it's just like, if you're one split second from making a wrong decision, people die. I always say, managements or government officials make big mistakes and there are millions of dollars lost in a corporation or, on a contract or something between 2 countries, but money gets lost and, that's it. You and I, if we make that type of mistakes up in that altitude, people will die. And so that's why you have to be like 0 mistakes in this thing.
Yeah, and remember, it's only, we're small pieces of grain.
Yeah,
to be on this planet. So
yeah. Hey, listen, you're a mother, you're a wife, you're a history maker. How did you balance all that military demand or service in your personal life and family life?
Chaos control. You gotta
chaos control. I like that.
It's not control chaos, but it's chaos control. You got to be very proactive in how you deal with your family life. Talking to your spouse, in my case, is incredibly key. He's a person. He's got multiple degrees in physics. He's got like 5 degrees, getting his PhD, and it's very important for him. And so we have to make sure that we're on sync with our schedules. We have support network of our family and friends. Sometimes military support when I was in the military. And it really is about prioritizing what may be important one day. The next day, one kid might be important. The next day, it might be my doing a podcast. Maybe it's the next day my husband is doing his PhD degree. You have to be able to prioritize and shift those priorities almost on a daily or weekly basis, and just make sure everyone's involved and make sure everyone understands so there's no issues.
Merryl, you talked about self-worth, sacrifice, discipline in Shatter the Sky. What's one habit or mindset shift that helped you build unshakable resilience?
Now, I think one of the habits is persistence and to always be flexible when something happens that you might not quite expect and be ready for those opportunities. So you just gotta, I don't think anything in life really goes the way you want it to. And you have to be prepared for that. And you have to be prepared to, if this is something you truly believe in, to go in the long haul and just keep at it until you get what you want or get close to it. And so that's what I've learned about my journey so far, is that just being persistent and everything that I do will, work its way to the goal that I want.
Yeah, I always say to people, be persistent and consistent in your approach. And if that doesn't work, change your approach. If that doesn't work, change your approach. Never take your eye off the goal, or, whatever manifests in your mind, whatever that goal is, just go for it. Just like soccer players or football players. If somebody takes the goalpost off the field, you could be the best player, but if there is no goalpost, where are you going to go? So if you do one approach, it doesn't work, but the goalposts still sit there, change your approach. Try different thing and try different thing and try different thing. Just like a running back, 1 inch at a time, 1 inch at a time. And if the goal and dream and the why is big enough, you figure out the way. Don't you agree?
Absolutely. 100%.
If your why is big enough, you always will find a way. Well, after retiring from the Air Force, you became a speaker inspiring people in leadership, STEM, and diversity. What made you take that leap?
For me, it wasn't a big leap. I mean, when I retired as a Air Force colonel, and I was already speaking before I retired. I was being invited to different organizations to talk. And I realized that people like to hear what I had to say. People, based on what I've done, I have some actions that fit in, that back my words. So I started doing personal training when I retired, because I wanted to inspire and motivate people to be better versions of themselves. And I wanted to do it through fitness and also speaking to people. I feel like getting to youth, young people, it's really easy to get in the gym with them and work out with them or work them out. And then when they're tired, I can get in and hone into on what they really want while they're building bodies. So it it was just natural. It was natural to speak in front of different organizations. People enjoy my stories, my humor. People enjoy what I have to say. I give it that little Bronx flair, a little
Uh-huh.
sarcasm, a little fun. But just make no mistake, I'm still a retired colonel, and I know how to lead.
Why do you think it is people like you, myself, that something significant happens in our lives, but we want to share it with other people? I mean, there are tens of thousands of pilots that retire from Air Force, from Navy, from airlines, and they just fade away. Why is it that people like you and I feel like we need to contribute, we need to give more? I think I know the reason for myself. It's just like giving back to the society and lifting people up, not giving a handout, but a hand up, helping
Right.
people to realize that, hey, here is a guy that started with nothing, coming from a different country, from a village, and here he became a commercial airline pilot for one of the most prestigious airlines in the world, and always improved himself by simulating everything. Started saying, what is your sim time? What is your sim time? What do you simulate in your head? What is your goal aspiration that you want to reach? And then if you keep doing it and doing it and doing it, you won't get denied. And now I feel like I really need to give back to society, back to the young people, whoever want to be aspired to become a pilot, or whatever they want to do. Just tell them that, look, if I could do it, you can do it, but it's going to take some work on your part to do it. And I'm here to help you, give you the tools to do it.
Right. For me, I've always had mentors in my life since I was in school, since I was in junior high school, uh end of my elementary school years, junior high school years. I've always had people that saw something in me and tried to give me tools to help me be better. And so when I became a late stage major in the military, I realized that it is now my turn. There was just a point where I knew I was in positions where I could be effective in getting people to think about their lives a certain way or be able to affect some change in their life in a positive way.
Hmm.
And I believe that's just based on the mentorship that I have had for me throughout the years, and I still get mentorship. But I figure, well, my thoughts are, when you get to a certain point, when you're in management, when you're a senior VP, if you're not mentoring, you're wrong. Like if you're not trying to help someone better the company, if you're not trying to give back in those ways with your time and your wisdom, then why are you there? Like, is it really that much? Do you just want to make money all the time? Yeah, money's great, but how do you, if you're working in a culture of a job or an organization where the culture's strong, how do you still strengthen that culture? How do you strengthen and make that organization better and more resilient? You ha- to me, it's a no-brainer. You have to, bring other people up who have maybe different views, different ways to take the company, different, during the times are changing, someone who's adaptable. You want those people to be the future leaders. You don't want the person who just says yes. You want the person who's curious, who thinks, who asks questions. So that's what I want to see. I want to see people run the world that are curious, ask questions, are compassionate and kind, and still have the knowledge to do things. And so when I see young people like that, I want to help them to make them better. I want to give them tools so they can navigate life, because a lot of people fall to the wayside because there's challenges that they can't overcome. And I'm here to tell them that you can, and let me
Yes.
help you. Let me show you a
Yeah.
different way.
Yeah. I always said the secret in winning in life is giving. And, something, and it doesn't have to be money, right? Right now, you and I giving our time, our knowledge.
Yes.
Other people, they play the forward. Now we want to play forward and help other people, come up. And, I always say the rising tide rises all the ships, not just one or two. So,
Right.
a lot of people are there for themselves, but you and I are here for the community and the whole society as a whole. You competed as the toughest nail season 2. How did your military experience prepare you physically and mentally for that challenge on the reality TV?
I don't, my military experience, number one, I work out all the time,
Uh huh.
certified personal trainer. It's nothing can really prepare you for what's gonna happen on Tough as Nails. It was basically hard labor, like compacted in a 1 or 2 hour period.
Uh
So
huh.
you had to have endurance. And so in the military, endurance is that's the name of our game. Whether we're running, we're doing push-ups, we're doing sit-ups, whether I'm flying for a 10-hour mission, I know how to get into a position and endure. Like for me, you can make me endure by myself or with a group of people. Look, as a YouTube pilot, you could give me a crayon in a box in a room and I will entertain myself for hours on end. So that's what it's about. It's about endurance. It's about just being able to endure, and I think the military really taught me that point in the game. And it was about what I loved about the show Tough as Nails. It was really inspiring. Phil Kogan is the executive producer with his wife, Louise Kogan, and they were all about showing uplifting stories of people in the trades as well as military veterans, how you can overcome some obstacles in life. So that's what I loved about it. So yeah, it was hard, but I loved it. I have some dear friends, my teammates. The reality show happened a couple of years ago, and we still communicate to this day. Like we're
Yeah.
friends for life, brothers and sisters for life. So I love those guys.
That's
I was
awesome.
glad
That's
to have the
awesome.
experience.
You said it. You hit it right. The nail on the head. Endurance. Even in aviation, if these careers that you and I chose, you have to have the endurance. You have to. You just can't quit in halfway and try to win the race. You just can't. That doesn't work. Well, you're living proof of representation. That representation matters. What message do you have for young girls, especially those of color who want to pursue aviation or STEM but don't see the role models?
My if you don't see the role models, become the role models. Like I'm out here talking, saying it's possible. I have a engineering degree, electrical engineering degree. I've flown aircraft. I have done welding. I have turned wrenches. I've worked on cars. Like women could do that stuff. And if you don't see it, I'm telling you, you could be it and work at it and look at some other. If you don't see someone, just become that person. Like for me growing up, I looked at, um, Star Trek. I looked at the Star Trek characters, but now there are women out there doing it. Some young kids don't have access to Instagram. Well, they better not because they should be studying. But if you look on there, you'll see women welding, see women working on cars. You'll see women doing all these things. I don't think women are doing. I don't think there's anything out there that women are not doing, and you can find them. So, and if you have troubles, just DM me. Like, I'm Dragon Lady 788. DM me on social media. I'll find them for you.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I always say that leaders are readers. I mean, I read almost 350 books. That's before, the social media and YouTube and Spotify and, Blinkist. I still find books that I might not have time to read the whole thing, but at least in an audio version, I can listen to it.
Right.
I don't know if your book is in audio version yet or not. Is it?
It is.
It is? Cool.
It
Because
is.
I just got mine done as well. So I tell people, if you don't have the time, just treat it like a podcast. Just put it on. You can download it, put it on your favorite list and listen to it bit by bit because information is out there, and there is absolutely no excuse for someone who wants to, especially living in this wonderful country, that freedom matters. I mean, you receive everything. You're not living in a country that you're restricted or the government censors stuff. Everything is available to you. Everything. So
Right.
choose what you want to do. Go after it. Just tremendous amount of information out there. You can educate yourself or reach out to either of us through our website or whatever it is, and we'll direct you to the right, put you in the right direction. Your memoir is about defying expectations. What was the most challenging and most rewarding part of writing it?
Ooh, the most challenging was actually writing it. Like most people, for
I know,
years,
right?
yes,
People think it's easy, right?
most people
It's
told me for
not.
years, like, write a memoir. And first of all, I can't write well about myself.
Uh-huh.
So I actually had to get a ghostwriter. And finding a good ghostwriter is difficult. And so the first person I found, it didn't work out. And then that was right before I did Tough as Nails. And I came back from Tough as Nails. And we parted our ways. And then I reached out to a friend of mine that I knew wrote military history, and he wrote books, and he's wrote screenplays, and we talked, and he had time. He asked me, how much time do I want this manuscript done? I said 1 month. I said, I have a whole bunch of interviews from the other potential ghostwriter. It didn't work out. We had hundreds of hours of video when she interviewed me. And so he said, let me take a look at them. I gave him about a third of it. And he goes, I'm ready to write, because he knew me. So he was a friend of mine for about 7 years. And so in 1 month, editing back and forth, him and I, we came up with a manuscript, and it took 1 month. And then from there,
Wow, you're lucky. You're fortunate. Mine took about almost 2 years.
yeah,
Just
I don't mess around. And I had the interviews. The best thing is I could talk very well. The interviewer asked me some good questions, and he's a good writer. So
so you were interviewed, and based on the interview, the manuscript was written.
yes. So it was all my
Okay.
words. It was just my ghostwriter's name is Lance Thompson. So he took my recordings, my voice, my words. He knew who I was. We had done some other small projects together. He would edit some of my stuff that I have written, like blogs and stuff. And it didn't take long because he knew me. He had been to Beale Air Force Base. We had a connection through his brother, who's a real estate agent that helped my husband and I buy the house that we retired in. So we have, there's a lot of connections between us. And so that worked out really well. And after 1 month, I had a manuscript, and I shopped it. I was looking to go traditional. It was very frustrating because it was really during COVID. And
Yeah.
so, and as COVID was ending. So eventually I found a book producer in Canada And
Okay.
she taught me the ins and outs of taking a manuscript. She read it. She at first said, "Hey, I'm going to give you a lot of feedback. Don't take it personal." The next day she called me. She goes, "Wow, this is incredible." She goes, she's like, "We could get this out and done in 6 weeks." And I said, "Okay, let's go." So we worked hard that year, 6 weeks back and forth editing, laying out the foundation, and then she taught me the ins and outs of Amazon and how to self-publish. So 6 weeks later, it was out. So I did it, the whole
That's
process.
amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, the whole process with the first ghostwriter. It took about 14, 16 months, and it was done. So I'm the type of person, if I have an idea, I want to get it. It was coinciding with when Tough as Nails was being aired. So I wanted to take advantage of that. And sometimes you find people who will tell you, no, you can't do it this way. Oh, traditional publishing takes years. But I typically don't listen to you can't do it this way. I'm like, well, we'll find a way. We'll find. Remember,
There is
persistent and
always a
consistent.
way. You
Persistent and
know,
consistent. And
asking you shall receive. Knocking the door eventually will open. Maybe not the first time, but eventually will.
yes, and
Yeah.
so it was a good learning experience. I did the same with the audiobook. I have the audiobook. I did it in my voice, a huge learning curve. And I got to go to a studio to do it with an engineer and learned a lot about how long your voice lasts, what you could do to help. It took 4 sessions to record it, the fifth session for pickups, and it was ready to go.
Awesome. Well, I chose not to do it my own voice because
Really?
it took me over 2 years to get the book. And, you know, I wrote the whole thing, and there was no chat GPT then, right? A few years ago. So I had to write it and then go through it, kind of compartmentize it, because there was a talk about making a movie about it. So I wanted to go back and forth, flashbacks back and forth. And then at that time, when I had everything ready, I got a ghostwriter, Aaron Kitchen. I said, well, put this together in, like, 1976, this happened, 1979, this happened, 1981, this happened, 2018, this happened. So he goes back and forth. And then when he wrote it, then I had to give it to another person to edit it. And he did a good job with editing. And then we went to find a publisher. And that was the hardest part. And the first publisher was an awesome guy, but didn't promote the book. So I had to go to somebody else to promote it. It is challenging. It is challenging. What's the biggest life lesson that you have learned from flying at the edge of space?
The biggest life lesson is that, man, the perspective that you see from above 70,000 feet, the curvature of the earth, the fact that you look above, when there's no lighting pollution, you see infinite amount of stars. Some of the stars don't even exist anymore. The light that has finally reached this point, star could be long gone,
Yeah.
is that life is very small and fragile, and there's so much more out there. So why do we sweat really the small stuff that consume our day to day? I find that the drama in your life is so small in comparison to the rest of the universe, and that the amount of time we're going to spend on this timeline of life of the cosmos is equates to one grain of sand. So why don't waste it? Don't waste it on the trivial things. Like, do something special with that moment that you have on the timeline. So I think a lot of people who fly that high or get to see the earth in a different perspective than on ground level have those thoughts. And it really, especially when I'm dealing with my kids, sometimes I get wound up, but
You wish
sometimes
you
I
could take him up to
remember.
70,000 feet for a second, right? So
Yeah.
they could see. Oh, man,
So
I wish I could do that so much.
yeah, so sometimes
Fortunately for me, flying at feet of 40,000 plus, in a jetliner, which I've done, I've taken that airplane to the maximum flight level, 43,000 feet. And, if I had someone, a family member or a significant other sitting back there, say, look out of the window, you get the perspective of life, how magnificent it is, how big it is, and how small we are.
Yes.
And it's just like I always say, in the case of a man, I think the brain is what 3.8 pounds and
Something like that.
controls the whole of this body. If you're 200-pound person or 220-pound person like myself, this thing controls everything, and it's just like, and sometimes it's very destructive. What happens up here that makes people go into drugs and alcohol and bad habits, and they take the whole machine, this whole big body, into failure and over the cliff, and whether it's suicide or drugs and alcohol, just consumes them, or gambling, or whatever is out there. There's a bad habits just destroys this whole thing. If they could only get hold of their mind and see how magnificent this earth is, all the energy that exists, that creates this planet, the mountains, the rivers, the trees, the plants, we have that energy within us. We really have that energy within us, and we need to put it into good use.
Like, we do. I mean, the odds of us being on this planet alive in the state that we're in, very small. So appreciate that fact and see what you can do with the limited time you have. What impact can you make? What are you going to do with that one grain of sand on the timeline? Are you going to make a big impact, or are you just going to just waste it? I mean, it's your choice. But I
Yeah.
would prefer to do something that is more impactful than I would rather create than destroy. I'd rather be more creative and foundation building than destructive. It's easy to get caught up in different addictions
You
that are
got a
not
very artistic part in you, don't you? That's
a little
I
bit.
love it. I love it. I love it. Um, some of the motivational stuff I've done in the past, especially with younger people, I said, go ahead, snap your finger. And I said, why? I said, well, it just doesn't matter. Go ahead, snap your fingers. So what is that? That's 5 years of your life just went by that fast. You look back, and the last 5 years of your life is that fast. 5 years from today, just go ahead, do this, and you see that last 5 years went by that fast. I
Yes.
can tell you honestly, the last few years of my career with United, I mean, just like went so fast. It just like I can't even fathom how fast it went. And now you look at it, that every 5 years, it's just like, where did it go?
It goes
What
quick.
what did it
It
goes
goes
quick.
it goes so quick. I
Yeah.
mean, yeah, I can't believe like, you know, 8 years ago, it's almost eight. This will be the eighth year. I retired from the military. And even in these 8 years, so much has transpired, so much change has happened, whether my kids are growing up, going into junior high school, just all these things. It's amazing, but it's crazy how life changes so quickly before you know it. Then you're old, looking back, regretting maybe. Like
Yeah.
I'm going through this life with no regrets.
You know, that's a beautiful thing to say. I always tell people I want to be 102 years old. I don't know why, but I want to be sitting on my rocking chair, looking back in my life, going back and forth, say, yep, did this. Yep, I did that. Yep, I did it. You just gotta do it. You just gotta do it. We're coming close to the end, so I have just a few more questions. You've conquered the skies, leadership, writing, and speaking. What is next? What is next for you on the horizon?
What is next? A few things. I've been hesitant on saying it, but I'm getting pretty close. Um, Getting into my own space to continue what I'm doing. So, for example, just opening up, buying property to actually do my virtual talks, more content creation. I have ambassadorship with Carhartt. I have an ambassadorship with Paramount Veterans Network. I have a sponsorship with emotional intelligence company Blue EQ. So check it out. Um, and so those are expanding. And so I need to be outside of my home because my kids get up in the morning and I have to manage that, because typically I'm on the East Coast, working on East Coast time. And so I'm about to close on some office space to conduct that and do some other projects out there. Um, In addition to that, I'm working on a graphic novel based on my book, Shatter the Sky. So that'll be coming in the next couple of months. I'm working with an illustrator that has taken a little longer than I want because, again, you got to find the people who want to be committed to your vision and want to do good things. It's very hard to find people that are focused, consistent, and persistent. Like it's hard and it takes a while. So
You
I'm
said it.
patient. Yeah, I'm
Yeah. Be
patient and I'm going to get
focused,
that done.
consistent, and persistent.
Yes, absolutely. So those are really the two major things. I have some other things in the fire that I'm working, but we'll see. We'll see how that comes out.
Well, I wish you best of luck on that. For young people, especially women and minorities who dream of flying but face doubt, what is the best advice you can give them, especially girls?
Oof, facing doubt, it's hard. Like the self-doubt, I think especially in this day and age in this country, I think people across the board, and they don't have to be young girls, women of color. I think a lot of people are doubting what they can bring to the table. And so I have to quote my first instructor, my first on-wing, Ronnie Robinson, Lieutenant Ronnie Robinson. We're still friends to this day. You know, when you walk into a room or when you're doing something, a lot of people will look at you and think you might be there for whatever reason. But as long as you perform and continue to perform, eventually they will say you're there because you're that damn good. So I've tried to impress that upon a lot of people. Always perform. You can't, what people think of you, you can't really change it, but your actions will say a lot about you. And eventually they're going to have to recognize that. And I typically say if they're talking behind your back, it doesn't matter at that point because they're behind your back and you're still moving forward, looking ahead, and they're staring
Exactly.
at your back. So just remember those things. Performance, performance. There's other things that you can't control. But if you continue to perform, someone will notice it, recognize it, and you will be treated accordingly.
And when you're standing in front of 500 people or 5,000 people and speaking, I mean, there's a reason you're there. There's a
Yes.
reason. You've done something right. You've done something good. It's not just given to you. You had to prove yourself,
Right.
and it is what an honor it is. What an honor it is to be able to go stand up and talk to people and share with, people. I mean, in your case and my case is not, we're not just book smart. We are not leaders who have just read enough books or have a PhD in something and we're sharing. We actually have done something very significant, whether it's saving 381 lives or being the first Black female pilot who flew the U-2 at the edge of space. That's pretty damn incredible. That's incredible. Is there one lesson from aviation that applies to everyday life that you would like to share with us?
One lesson that applies to everyday life. Well, I think I think this will resonate with a lot of people. Um, in the current environment, there's a lot of things happening. Like there's a lot of things politically happening. Some people like it, some people don't. People are arguing. People feel a certain way. Um,
A lot
what
of
I've told,
chatters, a lot of,
yeah,
a
yeah.
lot of, yeah.
Yes, I've told people.
I turn that off. I have to turn it off because I can't
Yes.
stay focused.
Well, that's what I tell people. Focus is key, right? There's a lot of
Yeah.
things out there that could be this chaff and flare that's distracting. So chaff and flare, when you're like when I flew Helos, SH-60 Bravos, we had chaff and flare in the aircraft. So what does it do? You shoot those off if a missile is coming at you to distract the missile seeker head. So you're the missile. You're focused on your goals. But there's a lot of stuff in the atmosphere, whether it's on radio, whether it's on television, whether it's people on social media. You have to stay focused. You have to look at your objective and your goals and the short-term goals to get there. A lot of things could be said that may or may not impact you. A lot of things are said just to get a rise out of you. You if you're a pilot and you're flying in that type of weather in IMC conditions, there's clouds, you need to be focused on your instruments to help you navigate.
Yeah,
And
you can
that's
push the pause button or pull to the side
no,
of the road. Yeah, you
no,
can.
you can't pull to the side. You just continue to focus on the things that give you the information to get to your destination. Everything else is a distraction. So, in the words of Kendrick Lamar, if you have to turn the TV off, turn the TV off. Like, if you have to do that, do it. If you have to put your phone down and not look at social media, or set your phone settings to only allow you 1 hour a day on social media, then do so. Maintain your focus. And so that is one of the big takeaways that I've learned from flying an aircraft. You got to learn to compartmentalize and stay on task.
Exactly. You just interesting you said it, social media and stuff like that. When you talk to someone, family member or whatever, they say, well, I just don't have time. Well, you spend hours and hours and hours on social media. I pay so much attention to that. Every time I go to the airport, every time everybody's heads down now. Everybody's like this, tunnel vision on that thing for minutes, more hours. And they say they didn't have 10 seconds or 20 seconds to respond to your text. 3 days goes by, the whole momentum is gone. Whatever
Yeah.
you were thinking about, because I compartmentized, I say, I forgot what it was all about. I just can't even remember it anymore. But there was a reason I wanted to talk to you at that time. And the other thing is that sometimes people have this phone, like they put it down, but now they're connected to their watch. The phone is down. I know the phone is down. And then you're like, every 5 seconds, looking at the watch to see what text came or who's.
Yeah.
I'm just
No
like,
watches.
It's 10 o'clock at night. It's 11 o'clock at night. At what point are we going to say, that's it, time up? Just you got to focus on positive energy, just on two together, or if solid, good, constructive communication, rather than all this just stuff. Oh, I just got a notification from YouTube. I got a notification from Instagram, or somebody just texted. Why somebody should text you at 11 o'clock at night? For business.
I'm not answering you unless I'm sending, unless they sent me a meme that makes me laugh.
Well,
yeah.
I can't wait for us to get together. 3 or 4 of us get together and talk in person. For those who want to follow you and follow your journey, read The Shatter of the Sky and hear you speak, where can they find you?
All right. So a couple places. You can, if you want to book me for speaking, Harry Walker Agency is my agent. You can look me up on harrywalker.com. You can look me up Instagram. That's really the social media that I answer people, Instagram and LinkedIn. So I'm Dragon Lady 788. The reason why is because I fly the U-2 spy plane, which is called the Dragon Lady. I was called Dragon Lady on Tough as Nails. 788 is my pilot number. I'm the 788th pilot out of 1,100 and I believe 16 pilots in this almost 70-year history of the U-2. And we may be graduating 2 more. The aircraft's supposed to go away. We're going to put a little pin in that for a second because there's some talks right now about things happening. I'm not sure what's going to happen. You can find me on LinkedIn.
Are you still active in the U-2 community?
I do. I get newsletters. I'm close to Beal. I'm about an hour away from Beal. So if there's functions or parties, I try to go up there. We'll see the U-2 pilots. Last August, we had...
Can you take civilians with you? Can you take civilians with you?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Next time you're here, we'll go.
Absolutely. Would love it.
I'm not sure if they're doing chase. I don't think they're doing chase car rides anymore, unfortunately. But yeah, I'll take you there. I will let you know there is supposed to be a homecoming event sometime in August.
Okay.
So yeah, you'll be my guest. Easy peasy.
Oh, would love it. Would love it.
Yeah, that's done. You see the aircraft. Check out Physiological Support Squadron, the suits, everything. That'd be awesome.
Hey guys, at the end of this podcast, I would have Merrill's information, so you can definitely go check her out on her website and social media on the Instagram. Merrill, was great having you on. I really, really appreciate your time. I appreciate your friendship, and I'm really looking forward for us to get together and talk more over a cup of coffee or dinner.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me on. This was awesome. And you're going to be here in August. You'll come with me.
Absolutely. I would love it. Thanks, Brett. Take care. Bye.